that may be significant. These conditions are necessary to prevent the disruption and impact to the wider community. Anyone who's organised or takes part in this assembly...
Please state.
Like I said, Stephen,
I don't recognise you or your authority.
That's fine. But listen, we're here to work together. But I can't have local businesses
We're
and
not
people
working
who
together.
have nothing to do
We're
with
not
this
working
complaining.
together.
So
there is a reasonable amount of protest.
I filmed it.
We are not working together. You
are
working for the Tory government.
Hey people, welcome back to Activism Uncensored. That was Steve Bray there, who no doubt a lot of our viewers and listeners will recognise from his Stop Brexit campaign that's been going on for quite a few years now, outside the Tory Party Conference protesting in Manchester, as has been happening since the weekend. And you might have seen our little teaser short clip from one of the other organisations who were down there. Lots going on today, and we're going to be seeing some clips from a lot of the groups who were there. So there was a marquee set up just a short way away from the actual conference itself, and just up all were there, the Free Julian Assange campaign with DPAC, BFAWU, Unison, Merseyside BLM, Me Too, lots of campaigns. We're going to be seeing some clips from these groups who were giving speeches at the marquee today, as well as the antics people who are outside the hotel where the conference is being held itself. So without further ado, we're going to dip into a couple of clips, and I'll just take us back to Steve Bray, who you saw at the beginning of the video there. We had a little bit of a chat with him. Let's see how he's been doing at the conference.
The cronyism, the corruption, the Tories, the scourge of the United Kingdom. Get Tories done!
Good afternoon, we're here with Steve Bray.
Hello.
Here to campaign against Brexit.
The Tories.
And the Tories. How are things going today? How's the campaign working out?
Well, we've had a bit more hassle with the police. Obviously, they've come in with their... they've threatened us with Section 14 arrest again, and we've added amendments just for us. So we're not allowed to play any protest songs. We're not allowed to... Well, we're not allowed to go wherever we like to protest. We have to stay in the area that has been designated. Now, for me, that's not a protest. It's control.
Yeah, it's hiding behind the public order bill as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
Have you managed to catch coming out so far?
Oh well, we just had Andrew Griffiths. If you don't know who Andrew Griffiths is, he's the former Sky executive.
Yeah.
Who lent Johnson his £10 million house to be coached for the leadership challenge. And he was given a safe seat.
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks a lot for the great work, Steve. Thanks a lot for being here. Keep up the good work, mate.
Thank you very
much.
Great to see you.
Yeah. Steve Bray.
Thank you, everyone.
Bound to go over 1.5 in the next couple of years because of the El Niño effect. So climate breakdown is accelerating, and it's already killing millions of people around the world. Global food production is going down. It's already happening. People are dying everywhere. 20,000 people died in Europe last year because of the heat wave. Loads of people are dying everywhere because of climate breakdown. That's how bad it is. And carbon emissions are still going up. And if anyone wants to blame China, we buy their goods.
I always had a feeling that there was more I should be doing. I had a sense that at some point I would have to, as I thought, raise my head above the parapet to shift my focus from, the confines of my own life and start looking at the world beyond. But like lots of people in their 30s and 40s and 50s, I was busy. I had a full-time job. I was lucky I had a job that I loved. I was a teacher working with children with complex learning difficulties and later children with autism. I had my own children. My life was full and occupied. But it wasn't until I heard those words that Jane has already told us about. I had heard the words of Professor Sir David King, and I realised the urgency of the situation. We have 1 to 2 years now, 1 to 2 years, to make a difference to the course of humanity.
So we get people together, we discuss our fears, we get to know each other, we get trained in the power of love to change the world. That sounds soppy, but resistant, bold, non-violence. You've seen what's been happening, that's why you're here. And it does change the world, and you won't feel alone, because when you get what's happening, it's terrifying, and then no one wants to talk to you about it, or they tell you it's all going to be fine, and it's not, because we are fast down the slippery slope. How am I doing for time? I think that's probably nearly it. I wonder if there's some other killer thing I should be mentioning to you.
So that was Steve Bray, the dedicated campaigner against leaving the EU, as well as the Tory party. And we also saw some of the spokes from Just Stop Oil who were at the marquee. You might recognise the final spokesperson there who appeared on Activism Uncensored just last week in a full-length interview, Mark Coleman. Wonderful fellow, wonderful campaigner. Please do check that episode out. I'll try and drop a link in the description of this episode. Check out what Mark's got to say. Really well received presentation from Just Stop Oil this afternoon on a rainy day in Manchester, but still an enthusiastic turnout from people who were there. And the next item on the agenda was the Free Julian Assange campaign. A lot of you will be aware of the Free Assange campaign, a journalist imprisoned for revealing war crimes on Wikipedia. Several years ago now, he's been moved from pillar to post. He was living in an embassy for a while. He's had a great struggle as of his campaigners. He's currently in prison, and he has been singled out as a journalist. But this is really a warning for any independent journalists who just want to tell the truth. And in Julian's case, he exposed several horrific war crimes and is currently in prison for telling the truth. So let's catch up with the Free Julian Assange campaign. The talk was titled "It's 1 minute to midnight in the case of Julian Assange." So this is from Stella Assange and the Don't Extradite Assange campaign.
Sure that this is not a side issue, especially here in the UK, because this is a global issue. You have the UN General Assembly in New York, at the UN building in New York, just 3 weeks ago, and President Lula da Silva of Brazil opened, or was one of the first 2 or 3 speakers, and he used his speech to call for Julian's release, and the General Assembly spontaneously broke into applause. And this is not a common thing at the General Assembly, and of course this was in New York. So it's very interesting to see. You can watch the video online. So this letter to the King was published it was leaked and published by Declassified initially, but I think it's been republished, and it was to the King. And of course Belmarsh is His Majesty's prison, HMP Belmarsh, and so he was just writing to the owner of the prison to let him know what it's really like in there.
I don't think it's a coincidence at all that the government is trying to make this example of Julian at the same time that it is passing authoritarian legislation to restrict our ability to strive, to restrict our ability to protest. And we saw yesterday that the police tried to stop protesters coming to the demonstration here from London. And so we need to ramp up our campaign to defend Julian, and I think that means doing everything we can to build awareness around this campaign ahead of Day X, and make sure that as many people are out on the streets on Day X, because what happens in the courts is not separate from what happens on the streets, and we have a responsibility to build that movement. And also we have the responsibility to do what Julian was doing and what they're attacking him for, and that is to fight the warmongers, to stop them from sending more weapons and from escalating.
So that was Stella Assange and Chloe Schlossberg there from the Don't Extradite Assange campaign. Really need to do what we can to get Julian released if we're to have any sort of idea of a free press in the world. Moving on, there were a few people from different organisations on the next panel, which was entitled Britain is Crumbling, Tory Cuts Are Killing Us. And obviously this is all about austerity and the poverty that the Tories have driven into poorer members of society and the wealth gap getting ever wider. So there was Ellen from DPAC, Ian from the BFAWU, and Julia, who's Vice President, in fact, of Unison. So we're going to hear from a few of those on the panel. And this is really something that is cutting deep with a lot of people at the moment, with that wealth gap getting ever wider, as I described. The Tories have tried to dress it up as the so-called cost of living crisis. However, it's just old-fashioned poverty and greed, as far as I'm concerned. So let's hear from the guys on the panel.
Attack on our rights and living standards. The ONS figures from 2012 to 2019, we do have figures, now show that 334,000 disabled people have died as a result of poor housing, cuts to income, poor nutrition and lack of support. Some of these are documented on a website, so every public statistic we've been able to get about every individual is recorded, and we've been recording the catastrophe that's happened to our community. Yes, that we're going to see thousands of people forced into work that they're not ready to undertake. And by the way, we always notice that when there's policies about disabled people and work, the emphasis is always on the disabled person, just to make it happen somehow. Because you know, if I just stand and keep asking for a job at the bottom of a flight of stairs, those stairs are going to just fucking disappear. And I can work anywhere. Because all employers are just dying to hire me. None of them have any prejudice about what my health might be like.
She's right.
So yes, as others have said, we need to work together. And I think we need more than solidarity. We need to be each other's accomplices. You know, we need to go further than that. We need to start holding each other's hands and going in and doing stuff together. And the government may be crumbling this country into pieces, but I don't think it's crumbled our anger. I don't think it's crumbling our determination. I don't think it's crumbling our resolve. And it hasn't crumbled our desire to love everyone, and that's the biggest thing, because that's what fuels our desires to work together.
Yeah, Ellen, there's absolutely right. And one thing that's fantastic to see at the protests at the Tory Party Conference is just it's not each individual organisation or individual people showing up, throwing, a few sentences out at the Tories outside the hotel and then going the separate ways. People are coming together, people are figuring out how they can best work together, and this has been really fantastic to see all the organisations sharing mutual problems and coming up with solutions together. So that was Ellen Clifford from DPAC there, describing some of the problems that have affected disabled people under Tory austerity. And up next, we've got the Women Will Not Be Silenced talk. So this is Chantal Lunt from Merseyside BLM and Fliss Premru from Me Too. But yeah, this is all about women's rights, women's equality, and especially within the workplace and in other areas where women are still not receiving equal treatment. So let's hear from the panel.
This actually leaves women more reliant on social security and public services, and that means that when public services are cut, which has been happening year on year on year for 13 years, that women are hardest hit because they are the group of people most reliant on those services. The other thing is that as services are cut, as care services are withdrawn from people who have disabilities and who have needs, the burden of that care falls on women individually. It's mostly women who provide care for elderly people who can no longer access services, for children when childcare isn't available, or for family members who are disabled and no longer meet the very high threshold for social services care. So what that does is place the burden of care on women, and it also forces women out of work. Women leave work to take on caring responsibilities that the state should be paying for. So as the state saves money, women lose money and are pushed further and further into poverty.
This is pissed off as every trade unionist and all of us. So today I'm going to touch a little bit on what Steph talked about the sort of current situation for women. Then I'm going to talk about my experience as a student activist, as a female student activist, which is actually what I was asked to speak about. And then I'm going to finish up hopefully by making it all sound less depressing and talking about what we can do about how horrible the situation is right now. Because despite what the Tories kind of want to tell you with people like Suella Braverman and Priti Patel and Liz Truss and Theresa May and all the others, women actually haven't been fully liberated. Women are still oppressed. Despite the fact that we can vote now, we have our own bank accounts, you know, we're allowed jobs and children. And if we're lucky enough, we can hire other people to look after those kids so that we can go and make loads of money. As much as the right bats around names like Liz Truss and fucking Margaret Thatcher, Cressida Dick and all those awful people, we don't have the same opportunities as those really, really rich women in government. Because there's two very big differences between us and Suella Braverman and Priti Patel and Liz Truss and all those. One is that we have morals and we're not awful, evil gargoyles who only care about money. But the other one is class. There's a very big class difference between us. As Steph said, they are the ruling class and they care about ruling class interests, regardless of their identities as women or women of colour or anything like that. Of course, I'm sure they will be subject to horrible sexism, and I bet the Tory Party Conference is absolutely rampant with all kinds of disgusting comments, largely made by Tory blokes who are obviously the worst. But the women in government and women in the ruling class don't have to deal with that sort of super double oppression that the working class women, normal women like us in here, and working people have to deal with. You know, if they have kids, they don't have to worry about childcare because they can hire someone else to do it, and probably not pay them very much either.
So that's a few clips from what happened at the protests at the Tory Party Conference today. Thanks a lot for sticking it out through the video. There's more things going to be happening on Tuesday, so stick around, and we're going to be hopefully bringing you some of the footage from the protest there. There's going to be a huge Stand Up to Racism demonstration at St Peter's Square, among other things, or emphasis on defending the NHS as well. So we're going to hopefully bring you some clips from those demos. And once again, if you're not done already, please do subscribe, like this video, and share around on your social media if you can. Thanks for sticking with us on Activism Uncensored, and we'll be back with you with more news from the Tory Conference soon. Take care, people.
We are the tongue that speaks the truth. We are the song upon the wind. We are the courage to stand forth. We are the change that now begins. On this good green earth, we will take a stand with an open heart and a healing hand. With an open heart and a healing hand.